Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be kind of like time traveling, through India's incredible electoral journey.
Yeah.
It's especially helpful if you're prepping for those UPSC exams or, even if you're just fascinated by how democracies evolve.
It's a story full of twists and turns.
Oh, yeah?
From a single party dominating the scene to the complex coalition politics that we see today.
Exactly. And we've got like a whole stack of articles and research to pull from.
Yeah.
So consider this your shortcut to understanding how India, despite huge challenges after independence, not only chose democracy,
Right.
but held the world's largest election at the time.
Exactly.
So before we jump in, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell icon so you don't miss out on future deep dives.
Please do.
Okay, so imagine it's 1947. There's poverty, a largely illiterate population, the massive task of building a nation from scratch.
Yeah.
You'd think a strong centralized government would be the go-to, right?
You would think so. And a lot of newly independent nations at that time went that route,
Wow.
opting for non-democratic regimes, believing that was the way to achieve unity and progress.
Right.
But India did something extraordinary.
Yeah.
It chose democracy, a bold move,
Yeah.
a leap of faith in its people.
It really was. And what's fascinating is this wasn't just like a decision made by a few leaders up top.
Oh.
The first general election in 1951-52 really showed how much the people embraced this whole idea.
Absolutely.
170 million eligible voters.
Wow.
Most of them couldn't read or write.
Yeah.
Can you imagine the logistics of pulling that off?
I mean, it's just incredible to think about.
It's an incredible feat.
And they came up with ingenious solutions.
Yeah.
Using symbols for candidates so people could easily identify who they were voting for.
That's such a cool detail.
Right.
And it worked.
It did.
Voter turnout was remarkable, and the percentage of invalid votes was really low,
Yeah.
showing that people understood and were engaged in the process.
Absolutely. I mean, there are stories about people celebrating voting day like a festival,
Really?
wearing their finest clothes. It wasn't just a civic duty.
Wow.
It was a celebration of this newfound freedom and power.
That's amazing.
And it really laid the foundation for India's democracy,
Yeah.
proving it wasn't something imposed from above, but a system the people truly embraced.
Exactly. And that brings us to kind of like, chapter one of this story,
Yes.
the Congress era.
The Congress era.
For a significant period, Congress just dominated Indian politics, winning 3 consecutive general elections.
They did.
Congress being the leading force in the freedom struggle. They had this immense legacy and public trust.
Yeah, they were the OG political rock stars.
They really were, and they had a well-established network across the country, a huge advantage over any other party at that time.
Right.
Plus, they were masters at inclusivity, bringing together this wide spectrum of ideologies and interests under their umbrella.
That's what political scientist Rajni Kothari termed as the Congress system. Congress, in a way, was both the ruling party and the opposition in those early years.
So it's like they were having internal debates to make sure all these voices were heard while also like running the country.
Exactly.
It's important to remember that even then, other parties existed.
Yes.
The Communist Party, for example, emerged as the second largest group in the first Lok Sabha election,
Right.
highlighting the diversity of political thought even from the beginning.
Absolutely.
But for a good while, it was to bed. The Congress their policies shaped the nation, laying the groundwork for modern India.
They really did. But this era of single-party dominance, it wasn't meant to last forever.
Right.
Seeds of change were being sown. Think of it like a tree growing.
Okay.
The Congress system was the strong trunk, but new branches were starting to sprout.
Ah, the rise of the opposition.
Exactly.
It's fascinating how these new parties with their different ideologies and agendas, they really started challenging that status quo.
They did.
Did they really stand a chance against a giant like Congress at that time?
They absolutely did. Opposition parties are vital to any democracy.
Okay.
They provide alternative viewpoints. They keep the ruling party in check and prevent the concentration of power.
Yeah.
It's like a healthy dose of competition, pushing everyone to do better.
So who were these new players on the political field?
Well, let's start with the Socialist Party.
Okay.
They split from Congress, feeling that the party wasn't doing enough for the working class and the poor.
Right.
They championed democratic socialism, advocating for greater economic equality and social justice.
So they were kind of pushing for a system where the government plays a bigger role in ensuring everyone has a fair shot.
Exactly. And figures like Jayaprakash, Narayan, Ramanohar Lohia, and Ashok Mehta were influential voices in shaping the Socialist Party's vision.
Right.
Their ideas resonated with the significant portion of the population, especially those who felt left behind by the Congress's development agenda.
Then there was the Bharatiya Janasangh, or BJS.
Yes.
They were on the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah. Indeed, they emphasized Hindu nationalism and cultural unity, often criticizing Congress's secular policies. One example is their opposition to the Hindu Code Bill, which aimed to modernize Hindu personal law. They saw it as an attack on traditional values.
So they appealed to a section of society that felt that their cultural identity was being overlooked or even threatened.
Exactly.
It's like they were tapping into a different kind of sentiment, right?
Yes, and key figures like Deen Dayal Upadhyaya and Balraj Madhok were instrumental in articulating the BJS's ideology and expanding its base. And we can't forget the Communist Party, who, as we mentioned, had a strong showing in that very first election, initially inspired by the Bolshevik Revolution and even advocated for violent uprising.
It's hard to imagine them being part of the electoral system given their revolutionary beginnings.
Well, that's the beauty of Indian democracy.
Yeah.
It's evolved to accommodate this wide range of political ideologies.
Right.
Even those that were once opposed to its very principle. Over time, the Communist Party transitioned to electoral politics, establishing strong footholds in states like West Bengal, Kerala, Andhra Pradesh, and Bihar.
Wow.
Leaders like S.A. Dange and E.M.S. Namboodiripad were key to this transformation.
So even though they believed in a different economic and social order, they chose to participate in the democratic process.
They did.
That speaks volumes about the flexibility and adaptability of India's political system.
It does.
And then there was the Swatantra Party.
Yes.
Formed in direct opposition to Congress's socialist leanings.
Right.
Advocating for free market principles and a limited role for the government in the economy.
Exactly.
They had respected leaders like C. Rajagopalachari and Manu Masani.
Yes.
But they never gained the mass support the other parties did.
They did it.
It seems like a lot was happening.
It was.
Congress was trying to hold on to power while these new players were challenging them from all sides, each with their own unique perspective.
It was a dynamic time, all these voices, debates, and competing ideologies.
Yeah.
They were forcing Congress to adapt and evolve.
But this rising tide of opposition, it eventually led to a major turning point in Indian politics.
It did.
The 1967 general election, a watershed moment.
Absolutely.
Congress's dominance started to wane, and the era of coalition politics began.
It did.
Hold on, so what exactly caused this shift?
Well,
I mean, Congress had been so powerful for so long. It's hard to imagine them just losing their grip.
It wasn't a sudden collapse. Think of it as an erosion of power over time. Public dissatisfaction with Congress was growing. Concerns about corruption within the party. Internal power struggles, and a sense that they were becoming out of touch with the people's needs all played a part.
So cracks were appearing in that once solid trunk?
Exactly. And at the same time, the emergence of strong regional parties started to chip away at Congress's national appeal. These regional parties represented diverse interests that weren't being adequately addressed by the national parties. They were like new saplings growing in the political landscape.
It's like India's political landscape was becoming more complex and fragmented.
It was.
With power shifting away from the center.
Precisely. And this fragmentation meant that no single party could secure a majority on their own anymore.
So alliances became crucial for forming governments.
They did.
And that's when things got really interesting.
Imagine the political maneuvering parties had to negotiate compromise and build coalitions to gain power.
Wow.
It was a new game, and the rules were still being written.
This must have been a chaotic time, right?
It was.
Oh, so much uncertainty and shifting alliances.
Absolutely. Early coalition governments were often unstable.
Yeah.
The Janata Party government in 1977, for example, collapsed in just 2 years due to internal conflicts.
So forming a coalition wasn't enough.
No.
You needed to manage these diverse interests and keep everyone on the same page.
Exactly.
Which wasn't easy.
Not at all. And then there was the issue of political defections.
Oh, right.
You had politicians switching parties sometimes right in the middle of a term to gain power or influence.
That must have added to the instability.
It did. It's like trying to build a house on shifting sand.
Yeah.
It was a turbulent period marked by short-lived governments and political maneuvering.
Right.
But it was also a testament to the evolving nature of Indian democracy. The system was adapting to a new reality,
Yeah.
one where power was more distributed and regional voices played a more prominent role.
So from a one-party dominant system, India had transitioned to a multi-party, coalition-based democracy. It's
Yes.
like a whole new chapter in the story.
Our new chapter.
But what does this mean for the future of Indian politics?
That's the million-dollar question,
Yeah.
and it's one we'll explore in the final part of our deep dive.
Okay, so we've gone from the Congress era, that period of single-party dominance, to the rise of opposition parties, and finally to this era of coalition politics. It's like Indian democracy has constantly been evolving, adapting to new challenges and realities.
Exactly, and that's what makes it so fascinating. It's a living, breathing system constantly in flux. For those of you prepping for your UPSC exams, this journey from one-party rule to coalitions is crucial to understanding how power dynamics have shifted in India.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's not just about memorizing names and dates. It's about understanding the forces that have shaped Indian politics and continue to influence it today.
Absolutely, and if we connect this to the bigger picture, we see that India's story is quite unique. While many other newly independent nations struggled to establish stable democracies,
Right.
India, despite its immense diversity and challenges, has managed not only to sustain, but to deepen its democratic roots.
That's a really good point. But this shift to coalition politics has also brought its own set of challenges, hasn't it? I mean, we talked about the instability of those early coalition governments.
It has the need for constant negotiation and compromise can sometimes lead to policy paralysis.
Right.
Different parties within a coalition may have conflicting priorities, making it difficult to implement long-term visions.
It's like trying to steer a ship with multiple captains, each pulling in a different direction.
That's a great analogy.
Mhm.
And then there's the risk of horse trading and political opportunism. We saw how defections became a major problem,
Yeah.
with politicians switching sides for personal gain, further undermining the stability of governments.
The coalition politics, while being more representative and inclusive,
Right.
can also be messy and unpredictable. It's like a constant balancing act.
Precisely. And this brings us to the present. Since 1989, coalition governments have become the norm in India, even the BJP's victory in 2014, though a single-party majority was achieved with a pre-poll alliance.
Right.
So what does this all mean for the future of Indian democracy? That's the question on everyone's mind, right?
What do you think the future holds? Will we see a return to single-party dominance, or will coalitions remain the defining feature of Indian politics?
Well, it's hard to predict with certainty, but one thing is clear. Regional parties have become a major force in Indian politics.
Okay.
They represent diverse regional aspirations and hold significant sway in national politics. Any party aiming to form a government at the center has to take them into account.
So those saplings we talked about earlier,
Yes,
they've grown into mighty trees.
exactly. And their roots run deep. They are no longer just kingmakers, they are key players shaping the political landscape. This means that coalition politics in some form or another is likely to remain a feature of Indian democracy for the foreseeable future.
Okay.
Whether it's pre-poll alliances like the BJP's NDA or post-poll coalitions, the need for negotiation, compromise, and power sharing is here to stay.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into India's electoral journey, I'm left with a sense of awe at how far this democracy has come, from the bold decision to embrace democracy after independence to the evolving dynamics of power. It's a story of resilience, adaptation, and the constant struggle to balance unity with diversity.
And as you continue your UPSC preparations or simply your journey of understanding India, remember this Indian democracy is a work in progress. It's a dynamic system that reflects the aspirations and complexities of its people, and its future will be shaped by how we as citizens engage with it.
So whether you're a student, a voter, or simply a curious observer, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep participating in this incredible experiment called Indian democracy. And if you found this deep dive helpful, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and click the bell icon for more insightful deep dives on all sorts of fascinating topics. Until next time, keep learning and keep diving deep